right. How's everybody doing? It's a little warm out there for November, but I guess that's, better than 100, right? All right. So, have you guys gotten your hands on the books yet? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, I'm Shafali Ravula. I'm a local here, and as I gather my stuff together, I'm going to introduce our two amazing authors, women authors. And let me just get my papers here. We were shuttling from all over the place, I feel like, to get here. So, welcome to the 27th annual Texas Book Fest. So just a couple logistics. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. Just silence your cell phones if you don't mind. And then we'd love for you guys to share your experience by tagging us on social media. So you can use the hashtag @TexasBookFest or hashtag TexasBookFest for both of those on Instagram and other social media avenues. After this conversation, our authors are going to sign books in the book signing tents on Congress Avenue. So it's not going to be here. So you're going to want to walk down back over to the book signing tents. And I really encourage you to do that because you also then might get this little yummy handmade chai baggie. Plus you get the book. Books are for sale courtesy of Book People. That is our local independent bookstore. And if you have a chance to even go there, you're visiting from out of town, you must go. It's an absolute paradise. And it's the largest indie bookstore in Texas. A portion of every book sale supports the Texas Book Festival's mission and helps fund programs that bring books and authors to students in low-income schools in Texas and to fund grants for libraries in Texas. So thank you. All right, now on to introductions. And we'll start with Madhushree Ghosh, right to my left. So Madhushree Ghosh's debut food narrative memoir, Khabaar, An Immigrant Journey of Food, Memory, and Family, was published by the University of Iowa Press in April 2022. Hailed by Ms. Magazine as a most anticipated read for the rest of us in 2022, a Chicago Review of Books, 12 must-read books of April, a phenomenal books must-read memoir in 2022, as well as a Brown Girl Bookshelf and Cold Tea Collective must-read 2022 memoir. Khabaar focuses on chefs, home cooks, and food stall owners, and the author's own immigrant journey as the daughter of refugees, questioning what it means to belong and what does belonging in a new place look like in the foods carried over from the old country. Her work has been a notable mention in Best American Essays in Food Writing, Pushcart nominated and published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, The Writer, Long Reads, Catapult, Bomb, Guernica, Los Angeles Review of Books, Lit Hub, and others. Please welcome Madhushree Ghosh. Thank you. Go. So many papers. And of course, to the left of Madhushree, we have Rabia Chaudry. Rabia Chaudry is an attorney, advocate, podcaster, and executive producer of the 4-part HBO documentary, The Case Against Adnan Syed, which was based on her New York Times bestselling book, Adnan's Story. Chaudry is also co-producer and co-host of 3 popular podcasts, Undisclosed, The 45th, and The Hidden Jinn, a 2021 Aspen Institute ADL Civil Society Fellow, and a 2016 Aspen Ideas Scholar. She serves on the Vanguard board at the Aspen Institute. She is a fellow of the Truman National Security Project, a fellow of the American Muslim Civic Leadership Institute, a fellow of the Shalom Hartman Institute, and a founding board member of the Inter-Jewish Muslim Alliance and the Muslim Jewish Advisory Council, both of which focus on building Muslim-Jewish coalitions around pressing policy issues and educating across communities to break barriers. Please welcome Rabia Chaudry. Okay, so let's start the questions. Okay, so the first book by Madhushree Ghosh came out in April 2022, but this one is coming out, being launched in a couple of days, right?
2 days.
Yeah, so most of you have probably not read it. I have to say both are incredible and weave really intricate food-laced stories And they share similarities, but they're very, very different as well. So I'm excited to have both of you here. So what I'd like to talk to you guys first about is, how, first of all, I think the best memoirs are food memoirs. Anyone else here think that? It's because they tell more than a story, right? They are a political history. They tell about an intergenerational family legacy, and that's what both of these do as well. And they intertwine food memories, whether negative or positive, and much more. So talk to us, both of you, about, let's start with just a general question about your regional foods. So, and maybe Madhushree, will have you go first. Like, what would describe your home regional cooking if you were to say, like, in general, typical terms? And this is Bengali food, right?
Yes. You guys can hear me? All right. I wanted to start first by thanking Texas Book Festival for this wonderful opportunity. It's just such an honor to see you guys. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you, Shafali. So I'm the daughter of refugees and an immigrant to this country. By that I mean when colonized India was divided by the colonizers, who are having a tough time right now, politically. We were divided on the basis of religion. There were people who had family members on one side of the border, divided by the British administrators who really didn't take enough time to figure out what was what and why they needed to divide us. So we were divided into Bangladesh, India, what's now India, and Pakistan. And I always say South Asians, we are all seriously one country and one region. And what's happened over the few decades is our foods have slightly changed across borders. So my parents were babies when they came to India, and they always talked about, till they died, they talked about how food in Bangladesh, food in Dhaka and Borishal was so much better, the cauliflower was so much bigger, the roses smelled so much better, everything about the country you left is always so much better. I've never been to Bangladesh, but I live that life every day because refugees have stories that immigrants continue. Bengali food is actually, doesn't have as much PR as Punjabi food does, and Rabia can talk more about that. So you won't see too many Bengali restaurants, but it's very simple, it's very straightforward. I'm a science girl, so I'll talk about the science part of it. It's always, you don't have buffet systems in Bengali food. You always take one meal where you start with greens, then you move to higher protein like a dal, and then you move from there to a fish, and then or a vegetable curry to get more protein in, and then you move on to fish, and then red meat if that's what you eat. But you always end it with a sweet or yogurt that's mishti doi, which is basically rounding up your whole meal. And that's what Bengali food is all about. That's my comfort food. If you guys are Twitter addicts like I used to be, I talked about dal chawal that I ate last night because I was missing my food. And Austin's got the best food ever. So that's where I'm at.
So maybe you're salivating a little bit and very curious about Bengali food, right? And Rabia, will you tell us about,
Yeah, Punjabis eat everything at the same time. We don't really think about it. No, but so look, all of our stories are, sure, there are regional differences, but there are familial differences too. And so the story around like the food in my family also it has a direct connection to the partition. Both of my parents' families lived in India proper, which would become India proper after the partition. Both of them had to move to the Pakistan side of that border in Punjab. My father's family was Punjabi. They lived in Punjab on the India side. They moved to the Pakistan side. My mother's family, they were Urdu speaking, and there's a cultural difference there. They came from Delhi, and Delhi is like, it has a lot of rich history tied with, the Mughal Empire. So my parents grew up like just a few miles away from each other, but their families were very culturally different. Their foods were different. So when they got married, my mom always lamented I had to learn to cook like a Punjabi villager. Cooking greens and dals. She's like, oh, my family, we do goats and we do lamb shanks and we do all these things, and their family does. So, but I got to get the best and the worst of both worlds in that context. So. The distinction I wanted to make, although, yes, there's Punjab on both sides of this border, is that Pakistani cuisine is actually quite distinct from what you're going to find, let's say, like if you go to an Indian restaurant. If you go to a Pakistani restaurant, you're going to find dishes you're not going to find on an Indian menu, and vice versa. And that's because Pakistan is bordered on the other side by Afghanistan, Iran. We eat a lot of meat. I mean, just if you got to really break it down, the veggies are a kind of an afterthought. And so I just wanted to kind of distinguish and elevate Pakistani food and hopefully encourage people by the end of this book, which actually is mostly about my weight issues, but people love the food part of it, to go and try out a Pakistani restaurant.
Yes, absolutely. And so that brings us to a discussion about how even growing up, whether you're in the diaspora or in the home countries, you still are cocooned for some period of your time to just your region. And then as you emerge into adulthood and you're exposed to other regions, you then realize, wait, there's such a thing as idli? What is that? And there's really a great number of scenes that are vividly depicted in both of your books about exploring and finding about these other cuisines. So can you comment on how that impacted you, that awareness of these other regional foods? And do you come back to still your own, or do you still like to explore? Sure.
Okay.
Madhushree.
So I grew up in Delhi. So, I was there till I was 21. So you end up eating a lot of food from different regions. I was in a Catholic school. And so I was used to every Christmas celebrating Christmas. So we had Wenger's in Connaught Place. Anybody from Delhi here? Wenger's in Connaught Place was an Anglo bakery, and so they would have these chicken puffs. So it was basically puff pastry, and it was very expensive. So my father would buy Black Forest cake, and my sister and I would share it. So, that's what our childhood memory was. The other one was called, I'm going to talk about restaurants in Delhi now, but there's a now defunct restaurant called Hong Kong restaurant, which is basically Chinese food, but Indian Chinese food is very different than here. And I was appalled when I came here to see the Chinese food. I'm like, this is not Chinese. But it's in Kolkata, the eastern part of India. There's an immigrant population, a Chinese immigrant population in a region called Tangra, and they've been there for many generations. They're business folks, and there's a lovely story by a research work done by Nina Furstenau, my editor at the University of Iowa Press, about the Tangra Chinese people, and the food is very Sichuan influenced. So we've been colonized by everybody under the sun, so we have that influence throughout growing up. So coming to this country, I was actually taken aback by the lack of depth of flavor. We are so, and when people come back and say, well, you guys wear such colorful clothes, well, life is colorful, and so that's what we represent. Food is colorful. So coming here, the issue here wasn't about regional food. We were very used to different kinds of regional foods. But coming to this country, you always want to go back to what is comfort food, and for me it was North Indian food because I grew up in North India, and that was dal chawal, which Rabia has also talked about, and looking at I was married for a time into a South Indian family. The reason why I say that is in India you marry families, you just don't marry one individual.
Yeah.
And so I was very good at cooking South Indian food. Because that's what you do. What I want to highlight here is as an immigrant, when you come to this country, the reason why you keep talking about the country back home or what's back home is because you miss it so much. That depth of flavor really, really dissipates coming to a country this large.
Yes, absolutely. And there's really quite a few scenes that come to mind when I've read both books about the McDonald's hamburger patty in Rabia's book that her father, I believe, said, well, why would you want to taste the beef? You would want it spiced. So,
Yeah.
go ahead. Rabia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, when you first asked the question about discovering other cuisines, my mind initially went to when I started college and I met, just because there was nowhere else to sit at lunch, two South Indian college students who then we became like lifelong besties. We've been best friends for like 30 years now, who introduced me to South Indian food. I did not know that there are different languages other than Hindi and Punjabi. There's a whole other cuisine. I'm like, Tollywood? What is Tollywood? It was such, and I immediately fell in love with the flavors. And to this day, like every couple of months, I'm like, I need my idli dosa hit. I just need it. And I learned to make some of the foods in my home. But the truth is actually, the discovery of new foods actually happened when my family immigrated here when I was 6 months old. And my family was learning about this country through its food. And I think one of the most almost tragic aspects of that is my parents really, really believed that anything you could buy in an American grocery store or a restaurant is going to be good for you, because the American government would not let its citizens eat terrible food.
Yes.
I swear. And I remember hearing over and over again my family saying, food in America is pure. Food back home has milawat. There's like stuff mixed in it. Like the milk comes and there's some water in it. And so I am 50% chicken bologna right now. Like literally, we ate so much processed foods because my parents really believed that this is incredible, this country, not just the convenience. You don't gotta cook it. I can pick it up from a window and it's good for you. Yeah, we discovered a lot about that later, so.
Yeah, that's going to go into our next couple of topics. So both of you used your memoirs as food narratives, right? Discussing how food impacted or threaded itself throughout life beyond for just its purpose at meals. So Rabia shared a very raw and real story of her life and her struggles with food and weight and more, much more to it. So, Rabia, why did you decide to tell the story now?
Yeah, I mean, when I decided that I was going to write a memoir, when I was talked into writing a memoir by my literary agent, let's be honest, I was like, you can write your memoirs in so many different ways, right? I mean, there's already my public-facing work, and those are stories everybody knows. But then I thought, why write about that anyway? People know those stories. But for me, the one thread that has like just plagued me throughout my life is the issue of weight and weight loss and fitness and wellness. So when I decided to write it, I said, Fatty Fatty Boom Boom was actually a childhood nickname. That's where the title comes from, one of many. And when I decided to write about that, I realized I actually can't take the food part of it out of it. Like, it's because my parents, although they were always like, we need you to lose 15 pounds, were never like depriving me of food. They would also say, you need to eat everything in your plate. And so they never made that connection quite, because when they were being raised, they were never stopped from eating food. They ate what they wanted as they wanted back home, and they never had any kind of like health and weight issues. So they didn't quite make that connection. So when I started writing the book, it wasn't until, it was about three and a half years ago, it wasn't until I had gotten to the point in my life, and I'm 48 now, so I was like 45 then, that I thought I had finally figured it out. I was like, I think I finally have learned every lesson I need to from every diet and every exercise regimen possible, and I've learned I've learned how many lies we're told about, all of these issues, and I have road tested every one of those lies myself. So I got to the point where I was like, I can write about this now because I figured it out, and that's why this memoir now.
Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. Yeah, and you really need to buy it, and it really goes into much more complexities than what she's even saying now, and so many really raw, candid moments in her life and people that impacted her discoveries as she went through this process. Madhushree, what about you? Why did you write your story when you did?
For folks who don't know Bengali, I'm teaching you a Bengali word. Khabaar means food. So now you can go around telling people you know Bengali. It was, Snark is my middle name, so it came across, I was just writing because that's what I do, but also I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to talk about home. I missed home so much, and I wanted to talk about a childhood that was not traumatic. I wanted to talk about childhood that has good memories, but it also talks about this book being a love letter to my parents who are no longer here. So every time I talk about this book, I'm talking about my parents. And I think all of us, regardless of where we come from, love our parents, hate our parents, love, hate our parents. We have many emotions associated with our parents. And I feel we need to talk about that joy that we had when we were children. This book came about, I've been writing it for almost 20 years. And it's a collection of essays. Some of them were published, and then University of Iowa Press asked for a proposal, and they said, "Oh, you have a proposal, don't you?" And I had no idea what a proposal meant, and I said, "Yeah, of course I do." So that's how this became a book. But even before that, I started out as a fiction writer, so most of my essays feel like it's fantasy, but those are the writing styles that I have adopted. And, it just came about because before this, I was talking about my broken marriage. And I was married for 17 years to a South Indian who was... And it was an emotionally abusive relationship. And I wrote about it. And it was 700 pages of, woe is me, life is so sad, look at me, I'm so sad. And, it doesn't work. It doesn't work if that's what you want to write about. You really need to talk about it. And how do you talk about it so others can also understand and see that life goes on after that. And when life goes on after that, it's actually a joyous life. South Asians, we don't talk about domestic partner or intimate partner violence or abuse. Khabaar magazine, which is a play on Khabaar, but Khabaar actually in Urdu means news. Khabaar magazine came up, shared a statistic about 48% of South Asian women experience some form of emotional, physical, immigration, financial abuse in this country. And that was data from 5-6 years ago. And we had a pandemic in the middle of it. So it's increased significantly. The reason why I wanted to write Khabaar was not just talk about food, but talk about the three-dimensionality of immigrants and move the shame of domestic or intimate partner abuse away from this and talk about it because South Asians need a voice on that too.
Mm-hmm. And that book does a beautiful job of illustrating and bringing that to attention. And there are facets of that in your book too, Rabia. So that takes me, we've got some more time to ask a couple more questions, and then we'll turn it to the audience for audience questions. Let's talk about marriage and family and food. It kind of, in general, Rabia, you did have the word marriageability in your book, which I love that you use that as a noun. And so tell us about the concept of what marriageability meant to you, because this started happening to you in your late adolescent years with your extended family.
Oh, no, it started actually way
Before that, yeah.
I think, my family, and I mean, when I say family, I mean extent, the people we don't talk about nuclear family, South Asians, when we mean family. We mean our third cousins removed. They started being very concerned about whether or not somebody would marry me when I was 3 and 4 years old, because I was a really heavy, tubby little baby. And it didn't seem like I was going to have a growth spurt and grow out of it. And anytime we visited Pakistan, the conversation around me while I'm in the room is about whether or not anybody would marry me. And when I was 11, I went to Pakistan and experienced kind of my first real Pakistani wedding with my aunt and stuff. And she was this beautiful princess-looking bride. It was a total circus, and I write about it in the book. One of the seminal moments is my uncle saying that, no, whoever marries you, I'm going to salute him. I'm 11 years old, by the way. This is a grown man. He's like, I'm going to salute him. He's going to have to cart you away with a crane. So, now I know that's shocking to hear now, but I'll be honest. I mean, the spirit of the book is more like my big fat Greek wedding, because the truth is that the things they were saying to me, they weren't coming from a place of malice. They knew their people. They knew their society. They knew the kinds of assessments that people who brought proposals to us would make about me, and they wanted to protect me. So there wasn't malice. However, in my first marriage, there was malice, and that is the malice that's the first time I felt when that I was actually really being insulted, and like that triggered like a lot of self-loathing and just a lot of spiraling. But it wasn't until that first marriage, which was physically and emotionally abusive, but I probably would not have entered if I had not been fed the notion for years that nobody's going to marry you. So the first guy that comes along, you're like, oh my God, I can prove them all wrong, right? So. What was the question?
Just you addressed it, yeah. Just talking about marriage.
Oh, marriage.
Marriageability, and you addressed it.
Marriageability, yeah.
You
Second
know,
time around, I married a guy who loves food and has weight issues too, and we get along great.
Yeah, and so she makes this. Okay, first of all, your analogy of the My Big Fat Greek Wedding is so on point because yes, many of the things that are discussed that are said to her or by many people that she knew and didn't know are shocking to hear and read. But then she makes it sound, it's funny. The book is funny. And so
These stories are funny to me.
Yeah.
When and I laugh about them with my family because I know they didn't mean any harm or malice.
Yeah, I did laugh out loud many, many times reading your book. So even though there was so many serious at-heart concepts to be discussed that you've uncovered. And I love that you did very well where you just, you talk about that first half of your life or longer, where the issue of the malice, where that was coming from, was very different because it is about, and at the end, both of you talk about contentment and what contentment means and how you shouldn't be shamed for not feeling content. And feeling content is a great thing, but you also shouldn't be shamed for feeling discontent, correct? Yeah. Okay, so, we've maybe one more minute. Do we want to do a quick fire or do we want to get a little deeper? Do you guys want to hear passages? Okay. Do you guys want me to read a passage? All right. Okay, so I've got a couple really short ones.
She's a science girl. She's got it all, tabulated. You can see.
Yes. Okay. This is super short. So for your record, page 59 on this book. It's a description. It's a food description, and I love food descriptions in memoirs, of course. I have never not been enthralled by watching her do this. The dough passed from left to right and right to left, faster, faster, growing in diameter from the sheer centrifugal force of the action until it was the size she wanted, nearly the size of the pan. As one side cooked, she dribbled oil around the edges and a bit on top, waiting a few minutes to flip the paratha, and drizzled a little more oil on the other side. By this time, she was almost ready with the next paratha, holding it on her left palm as she wielded a spatula in her right hand, working the one on the stove. Once the paratha was golden brown on both sides, with the edges nice and crispy, into the folds of a kitchen towel it went, to keep warm, until it was joined by another, then another. We were usually awake by the second or third paratha, aroused by her calls from the stairs, but mostly persuaded by the warm smell of dough sizzling on a tawa. And all 30 days of Ramadan, we ate those parathas with plain yogurt and goat shorba. Yogurt to help digest a meal eaten hastily around 4 a.m., and shorba because the savory bone broth was rich in nutrients, but light enough not to make us feel sick. We sometimes tore pieces of paratha into a bowl of shorba and let it soak up the goodness, like chunks of bread in a soup, and other times folded pieces of paratha into little funnels that were perfect to scoop up a little bit of broth and a bit of meat with and quickly pop it into our mouths. It was enough to fuel us all throughout the school day. So that was a piece around feasting and fasting in the season of Ramadan. Yeah. And then we have Madhushree's little, let's see. There we go. Okay. This is a little bit shorter, but I loved it as well. So this is the very end when she's talking about celebrating Diwali despite not coming from a necessarily religious family background. Every year during Diwali, I am reminded of how one can create one's family when the family one was born into is gone. Society doesn't give enough credit to friendships that are sometimes closer than family, nor does it give friends the respect we give to spouses. Every Diwali is my unproblematic Thanksgiving. The memories are happy because I choose them to be.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're allowed to go a little over. So can I do a little quick fire question? Okay, because I'm sure the audience wants to know things like your favorite way to make chai, Rabia?
Oh no, they're gonna kill me. In a microwave.
No! No!
It's my dirty little secret. Yeah.
I think I'm the only one in the room that knows that secret because I read the book.
She's like, I'm not gonna be your friend anymore.
Who is this person?
Do you have a comment on? I know you don't drink chai anymore, right?
I mean, this has chai on the cover. So, I have a political statement about chai.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise! More than the political statement, please don't call chai tea.
Yeah.
Please don't. At least you guys go educate your people. And the second thing is, this is Darjeeling tea. The colonizers actually put the tea estates in Assam and in Darjeeling when they couldn't access the Chinese green tea. And then, so then Indians and South Asians who actually drank chaat and ghol and other non-chai-like drinks to quench the thirst, as well as it was hot in India. They were then made to actually start liking tea by making masala chai, which is a combination of spices because we like sweets. So you put jaggery in it or you put sugar in it, and so when people say it's an Indian thing or it's a South Asian item, it is, but it was foisted on us.
Yes.
So it's a very problematic concept, even though we love chai. All of us love chai. I grew up with Darjeeling tea in my family, and I've written about that because Bengalis are snobs about tea. My family was a big snob about tea. My father would not drink masala chai, and the chai that I make right now is masala chai because I love it. But Darjeeling tea is basically just the liquor, first flush, orange pekoe, and then you don't even add sugar. You just drink the liquor, or you add 2 drops of milk because you think you're British. So that's what it is.
Yeah, great answer. Yes, and I'm Gujarati, and I love my masala chai too. So, okay, favorite spice from the subcontinent?
I can't cook anything without cumin, not even spaghetti. Like there's just, everything gets cumin, so that's my favorite. I don't know why, that's like so foundational for me.
I'll make it complicated. Bengalis have a spice called pach phoron, and pach phoron is 5, phoron is spice, and it's a combination of cumin, mustard, fenugreek, kala jeera, and methi. That's fenugreek. And so you mix it up. It's 1 tablespoon each, and you mix it all up, and you add a little bit of it. You can add it to fish. You can add it to dal. You can add it to greens. You can add it. It's universal. You can add it to anything, and you know you're coming into a Bengali's house when you enter the house and you smell pach phoron.
Wait, if we're allowed to have spice blends, then I take that back. It's chaat, it's chaat masala, which I mean, for people who are not acquainted with chaat masala, it has black salt in it. It can be an acquired taste. My kids like to call it fart masala.
Yeah.
I still make them eat it. It's delicious. Sprinkled on anything.
Yep.
Anything deep fried, French fries, pakora, like anything. Yeah. So I love that spice.
So good, so good. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? Yes.
Hey, so you guys have totally inspired me today thinking about my family food. The women in my family always made stuffing, of course, at Thanksgiving, but it's Southern cornbread stuffing. And so I kind of grew that recipe a little bit, put my own spin on it, and now I'm the one who, like, it's required. I have to make it every year. And you've inspired me. I was thinking what I should do maybe is just create a little book for my kids about it. I mean, they've seen me do it, but like, just, I don't know, like why I changed it this way, and even little pictures of here's how goopy it needs to look before you put it in the Because I don't follow a recipe. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how it feels. Anyway,
Yeah, just-
thank you for that.
Just last night, I met with a friend for dinner, and she told me how her sister had spent a couple of years collecting, reaching out to family members and saying, like, everybody is known for like one go-to recipe, right? So tell me your recipe, tell me why it evolved and what's the story behind it, and collected it into a little book, printed it herself, and it's like a family heirloom now, and gave it to everybody, and everybody in the family got a copy, and I thought it was a beautiful heirloom. Yeah.
That's a really good idea. Yeah. I'm inspired.
Great. I think for me, I was in my mid to early 30s when both my parents died. We never went into the kitchen because Mom was there. She was cooking for us. My job was to study and get the hell out, and that's what I did. And so when they passed away, you can make a complicated murg masalam, but you don't know how to make dal. You don't know how to make sabzi, and it was interesting because I would go to the kitchen and it was almost like, because I was sitting right next to the dining table studying, that I kind of sort of figured it out. But Sejal Sukhatwala talks about this. She's a food writer from London. She talks about it is that most of us graduate students or immigrants who just came here, we literally add a bit of this and a bit of that and then Google something and come up with a recipe, right? Mm-hmm. But that too is an immigrant's journey. That too is how you modify your stuffing as you are. Add some chaat masala to it. So, right? So I think it's great when people write about it because that also shows how your recipe moved through different generations.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to capture.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
How did your families respond to the story that you told? And were you thinking about that as you were writing?
This is the one time I'll say I'm so glad my parents are not alive. But, they were traditional, but very open in whatever I did or what I wanted to do. So I'm sure they'd be happy with what I've written. My sister is an extremely private person. And so I made sure that I respected that privacy, so you will not hear me talk about her as much. But she's in the book, and it is like I said, it's a love letter to my family. So there is nothing salacious in there. But it is hard for South Asian families to experience what I've talked about. Some of the parts are not very comfortable. But if you read a book and you're just comforted, then I haven't done my job. So it's quite all right to be a little uneasy with what I've written, and I would love to talk about it even more if there is that discomfort that you need to address.
Yeah, lucky for me, almost nobody in my family reads. My dad is the only real reader, and he had a really serious stroke a few months ago, and so he's unable to read, but he did get an advance copy about 8 months ago. And the thing is, though, most of the stories in this book, they all know, because we have talked about them so many times. They have been recounted. The reason I know them is because they've been told to me so many times. The funny thing is, my mother, I gave her an advance copy, and you're going to get to know my mother in this book. She's formidable. She read the first 5 or 6 pages, and the story, of course, begins with my parents getting married. And she put the book down and said, "No, nobody's going to read this." And then she said, and ever since then, she's never gone back, but ever since then, she only refers to the book as, "That book you wrote about me." And because she just read the first 5 pages. So now I'm like, "Oh, that book I wrote about you is getting really good reviews, Mom, thanks." So yeah, no, I'm not too, obviously, when I write about my children, I don't write their names. I'm also trying to be, even when I write about my exes, I don't give my ex, excuse me. But I say exes because of all the family, all your ex-in-laws too. Mm-hmm. I don't write their names. And so, yeah, I've been a little bit careful on those fronts.
I think in literature also, when you're in a writing workshop, they'll say, put that name in and then you can take it out. I think both of us made the same choice of never putting that name in, because you're really not just, I call mine the now ex, and I've never put his name in anywhere. I don't put his family's name. I come to that with love because it just so happened it didn't work out, but I have nothing against the in-laws. It's fine. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Question over there?
So my question is a little bit about the concept of authenticity in cuisine. talk about authenticity, especially in Texas, we like to talk about what's authentic Mexican food, and we get into all kinds of arguments about what's what. And what I've come to realize is when I combine foods as they relate to the traditions of my family, every time we make a combination that we enjoy, that's an authentic experience for us. But in the foodie circles, it becomes this very, very complicated topic that gets a little silly. So my question is, with foods that you remember from your childhood or foods that you connect with really emotionally, but you see different iterations of them, do they give you a sense of, oh, that's not what I want, or I don't like that, or maybe that authentic word comes out and says that's not authentic, or is it an opportunity kind of to maybe enjoy that food and taste it and see the difference and then adapt it to your own expression in that cuisine? Does that make sense? That was a lot of words.
Yeah, you know, I have 10 recipes at the end of my book, and none of them involve microwaves, so they're real recipes. But for every recipe I wrote, at the top of it, I said, "Here's how I make it," because I wanted, and I think I said in the foreword to the recipes, I said, "Listen, this is literally in my home, not just how my mother made, but how I make it," and that's my iteration, and it's because my iteration is authentic to me, and it's very similar to like kind of where I land on like the concept of home. Home is what I decided to be, and if my home is also America and also Pakistan and also any other, then only I get to decide that. So I just kind of ignore that kind of criticism and because you're not going to please anybody, and the great thing about being over 40 is you just don't care anymore. So just, I think you're creating beautiful new traditions, and your kids are going to take those and they're going to morph into something else, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Wait till you turn 50.
Yeah. 2 years. I got 2 years. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, I think all South Asia, well, all women should turn 50. I really think we should remove the word authenticity from food writing. And the reason why I say that is everything we do is authentic to us. And so when an immigrant moves through different lands and different countries, they adopt different ways of using things. I'll give you an example that's in the book of how South Asians actually contributed to the racism in South Africa. And it's a dish called bunny chow. And bunny doesn't mean rabbit. Bunny is a short form of bunya, or the business people who were Indians who were in South Africa. And it's a hollowed out white bread, putting lamb curry or vegetable curry wrapped in newspaper that was sold for the black population so they could take the food out from these establishments and not sit with the white folks. So we contributed to racism in a very strong way, but it's a dish that is very South African. It's very so what is authentic about that? The spices are very Indian. So when people travel with them, their stories travel with them, their spices travel, and sometimes they add in more spices to our cuisine. Cumin, for example, actually came with the Portuguese into our country, our region rather. Chilies is another one. So if you really look at it, everything we have has chilies in it. So is that authentic? Is that not authentic? So if we just take a step back, let's find the joy in food and joy of what do you do when you talk about food? When you present this food to somebody else who's never eaten your food, you're starting a negotiation. You're starting a conversation. And if it isn't to their taste, that too is a conversation. So how about we focus on that when we're talking about mixed cultures? Because all we're doing right now is mixing a lot in this melting pot.
That was a great way to end our time today. I'm sorry, we don't have time for another question, I don't think. Thank you both, Rabia and Madhushree. And just a reminder, the book signing is back over outside the Capitol, so we don't have a book signing here. And be sure to come meet our authors. Thank you.